As an appraiser, when I am starting to run comps on a purchase, and for whatever reason am not approximating the purchase price, my first question is, what am I doing wrong? My first question is, am I missing something here? Do I need to do another search? Is there a parameter in my search that I'm just not thinking of? In other words, I'm going to question myself.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
On a pretty regular basis, I get emails, Facebook messages from my appraiser friends across the country, from you, the listeners of this program. And sometimes you have some pretty darn good ideas. And got a note here recently from one of my Dream Team members. And he said, I just had some random thoughts running through my brain. Maybe a podcast could emanate from this discussion. So he and I had a little back and forth on the email, and I thought he had some great ideas, and I want to take and run with it today. And this is going to be a bit of a special episode in the sense that this is going to be directed to my real estate agent friends, my realtors out there. And I know you're out there. I know you listen to this program. And if you don't, a shout out to my appraiser friends who might direct their agent friends to this particular episode. We're going to be talking about gross living area. We're going to be talking about sketches. We're going to be talking about square footage and its effect on value. I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by DataMaster. DataMaster, of course, is the ability to save 30 to 60 minutes per report, folks. I don't know if you're doing as much work as I am lately, but man, we have been overwhelmed with the amount of work coming through the door, and grateful that DataMaster is there to make it easier. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. We're sponsored by Alamode. Speaking of efficiencies and the ability to run your appraisal office with more efficiency, Alamode will allow you to do that because of the tools that it has built into its software. Check it out. Go to alamode.com, or you can pick up the phone and call them. Still talk to a live person at 800-ALAMODE. Finally, we're sponsored by OREP Insurance. OREP, of course, is the E&O that I use in my office. They are an amazing company with amazing benefits. I'll tell you about one of them coming up, but you can check them out in the meantime by going to orep.org. That's OREP.org, O-R-G. All right, folks, I want to talk today a little bit about square footage. I want to set this up by sharing with you that great friend of mine, a mastermind student. I don't have his permission to use his name, so I'll let him remain anonymous. I won't even tell you where he's from, other than to say he's in a big city, okay? And he reached out to me and he said, hey, I've got some thoughts running through my brain. Maybe you could talk about them on the podcast, and maybe even an episode that would be directed at agents, at realtors, and help them to understand a little bit of why it's so important that gross living area or square footage, as appraisers, we use this terminology. I don't know how much of the other world uses it. When we say GLA, everybody that's listening probably knows what I'm talking about. We're talking about square footage, okay? We're talking about above grade, below grade, basement area, above grade. So GLA is going to be gross living area, usually above grade, and then basement area. But in general, we're talking about the size of the house, okay? And why it's important to make sure that that is appropriately reported. Now, this individual, again, I'm gonna keep him anonymous. I don't think he would mind, but who knows who's going to listen to this in his neck of the woods. But I'm not going to go into the details because it might reveal his identity. But basically, he had run into a situation where he was appraising condos, and there was some misrepresented GLA. Some misrepresented square footage. And as a consequence, he was appraising a particular property and he was using comps, and things just weren't working out. The numbers weren't working out as he did a little bit more research. And by the way, folks, this is another notch in the belt of why PIWs of why some of these other goofy things that we see happening in the appraisal valuation world, the lender valuation world, should just not happen, because any good appraiser, like my friend here, is going to do the research that it takes to be able to accomplish the task that's in front of them. That's why we're professionals. That's why a computer cannot do this job as well as a human being. Okay? So I'll just put that out there. So my friend did some extra research, which a computer would not have done, by the way, and found out that the comparables that he was using were incorrectly reported. And as a consequence, the value was wrong. Now, let me talk to my agent friends for just a second. You have a job to do, and I respect and honor that job. I get it, right? You have a built-in bias, if you will, and that's not a bad word. It just is. It's a truth. You have a built-in bias when it comes to the purchase and sale of a property. You represent either the buyer or the seller or both. Your job is to advocate for them. Your job is to get the thing closed. And as a consequence, let me just say there may be temptations to do things that, though maybe not unethical, are certainly on the edge. Okay? And one of those is to take someone else's word for the square footage of the property. Because I get it, folks. I understand. I really do. When I go out and do an inspection, the thing that takes me the most time on an inspection side, certainly not the write-up side, but on the inspection side, the thing that takes me the most time and effort is the sketch. And especially if it's a difficult, challenging property with angles and different levels and different things that would be difficult to get to. Now, that's one of the reasons that over the years I have used a laser measurer and I've used a laptop or a computer, handheld computer, in the field, because it allows me to be able to be more efficient and more effective at what I do. It allows me to do it faster, but not cut on quality, right? And I do a lot of sketching. And I understand the challenge. I understand the difficulty. And folks, let's just face it. I'm trained on how to sketch a property. I was trained by an excellent mentor, and I've taken classes over the years that have allowed me to become better. And frankly, just my experience, the fact that I sketch dozens of houses a month, allow me to be able to improve my skills and do better and better and better over the years. Now, this is not an incrimination of my realtor friends. It just is a fact that you have not had the same training as appraisers have had. And I get it, and I understand it. And frankly, my experience has shown that most realtors do not sketch. They don't do it. Rather, they take they take someone else's word for it. In other words, they look up the county information. They look up a previous MLS, and they simply guesstimate that is accurate. Big mistake. Here's why. Let me share with you an anecdotal story. And by the way, I could share several with you today, and I won't because of time. But let me just share with you one experience that I had years ago. Had a trainee, and a great trainee, well-trained, knew his stuff well. Sent him out on an inspection, and he sketched the property, and I did the write-up side. So yes, we were doing bifurcated products before bifurcated products were cool, as the case may be. But we were doing internal bifurcated products, okay? So I would send out, and many of you did this as well. This was pre-2008, pre-2010 with the HVCC and a lot of changes that we saw in the industry. And it was very common as real estate appraiser business owners to train your trainees to go out and do inspections, and you would spend your time doing the really important side, and that was, choosing comps, making adjustments, and the real appraising side of appraisals. And that's what we were doing. And I sent out my trainee to do an inspection on a property here in Idaho Falls. And I don't remember the exact numbers, so I'm going to use hypotheticals, but it was pretty darn close. So he went out and he measured the house at about 1,400 square feet, okay? He came back and we started pulling comps. We worked together on this report, and he and I were just baffled, just rubbing our chins, if you will, wondering what the heck was going on. And let's just say that we were not coming in at a value that approximated the purchase price. There was a willing buyer, there was a willing seller, and there were not comps to support that price. And anytime we are in that situation, we're going to bend over backward to make sure we're not missing something. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is not the obvious reason. The reason is not, we're doing it to meet purchase price, right? No, the reason is because purchase price means something. I believe in the invisible hand. I believe that Adam Smith was right, that the free market works. And most of the time, when you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, they have gone through the process of Economics 101, where, for example, the willing buyer has looked at many other properties and has, for some reason, decided on this property at this price. That means something. And on the flip side, the seller has priced that property correctly, or the broker, the agent, if you will, has priced that property reasonably based on the fact that they have done their research and they understand what it is that they do. And consequently, it usually works. And so as an appraiser, when I am starting to run comps on a purchase, and for whatever reason am not approximating the purchase price, my first question is, what am I doing wrong? My first question is, am I missing something here? Do I need to do another search? Is there a parameter in my search that I'm just not thinking of? In other words, I'm going to question myself. And typically, there's usually a reason, okay? Now, the reason is not necessarily always the appraiser. And in this case, it was not the appraiser. In this case, we were pulling comps based on a 1,400 square foot home. So we were pulling comps basically maybe 1,300 to 1,500. And similar age, similar neighborhood, and again, let's use hypothetical numbers. Let's say we were coming in at $200,000 on a value where the purchase price was $225,000, for example. Okay. Now, again, the first check and balance is I'm going to step back and say, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And am I missing something? And I went through that process and frankly could not see what was wrong. The information that I got from the inspector, and he was sitting next to me, okay, he was my trainee, was pretty accurate. There was great pictures, great explanation as to what the quality, the condition of the home was, obviously the square footage, the location, the various amenities and the things that an appraiser will look at. And we just couldn't justify not that it is our job, let me make it very clear, to justify a purchase price, but there was no justification for the purchase price. Let's put it that way. The market did not support this particular purchase price. And so, again, I'm going to second guess. I'm going to step back and say, is there something I'm missing? And I couldn't see it until I looked up the MLS sheet. I think as part of the process, I thought, well, maybe my inspector missed something. Maybe he screwed up. Maybe my trainee isn't as well trained as I thought he was, right? And so I went to the MLS sheet. Maybe there's something there that we missed. Is there a big shop in the back that maybe my trainee thought was on a different property and for whatever reason missed it? And there's your extra $25,000. I don't know. Let's take a look at it. So as part of the process, I pulled out the pending MLS and started reading through it. And something caught my eye, and that something was the square footage, because the pending MLS showed this home being a 1,750 square foot home, not a 1,400 square foot home as my trainee had measured. And I thought, uh-oh, maybe we got a problem. And so I did what any good supervisor would do, and that is I went back out to the property with my trainee in hand, and we said, you know what, let's make sure that this isn't on us. Because you know what? We're human. We make mistakes. Sometimes things happen, right? Especially when you're training. And so we crossed our T's and dotted our I's by going back out to the property. And I measured the property with the trainee in hand. And guess what? I was within 20 square foot of what he measured. In other words, it was nearly identical to what he measured. And so I did what any good supervisor would do, and I second-guessed myself a third time, and I went back around the property counterclockwise, where the first time was clockwise, and I remeasured as if I had not measured to begin with to make sure that I did not miss anything. And sure enough, I got back around to the corner that I started on, and we were right. The pending MLS was incorrect. And that was the difference between a $200,000 purchase price, or value rather, and a $225,000 purchase price. I'm going to tell you what I did about that when we come back from the break. We're going to first pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by three great companies, one of them being A La Mode. A La Mode allows me to be able to sketch on site as well as gather the other information that is absolutely critical and crucial to a good appraisal process. A La Mode is your software, folks, if you want to be more efficient, more effective, and have a higher quality appraisal report. Go to alamode.com or call them at 800-ALA-MODE. Folks, I'll tell you one of the things I will challenge you to do. Whatever software you're using, I would pick up the phone and I would call A La Mode and I would say, listen, this is what I'm using. This is what I'm used to. Transition's not going to be easy. Talk me into it. I can pretty much guarantee they're going to be able to do it for you. Again, it's alamode.com or 800-ALA-MODE. We are sponsored by DataMaster. DataMaster is the ability for me to save time every single report that I do. And I do a lot of reports, folks, and DataMaster helps me to be more efficient, more effective, and have a higher quality report. Here's why. When you are looking at two screens and you're typing in information from one screen, say it's an MLS, for example, into another screen, there is a very good chance you're going to have some human error in that process. In fact, there's an almost 100% guarantee that over time that the stats will show that you're going to screw some things up. Okay? DataMaster will solve that problem because everything that's in the one screen will be transferred to the other screen at the touch of a button, and it won't make mistakes. Check it out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. Finally, we are sponsored today by OREP Insurance. Folks, I just got done taking a class and a half. I'm not done with my second class yet, but a class and a half at orep.org. Now, because I am an OREP member, what does that mean? That means I get my insurance, my E&O insurance from OREP. Because I get my insurance from OREP, I also get some benefits that are absolutely incredible and amazing, folks. If you look, first of all, at the price tag of my E&O every year, I save money over my competitors. That's number one. But when you add into that the fact that I get benefits such as free, yes, I said free CE, okay, not just good webinars, which they have as well, but actual CE that can be counted toward my continuing education every year. How much do you pay every year in CE? Folks, I'm getting 14 hours this year through OREP for free. That is a huge, huge discount. So if you take the fact that I'm already lower than my competitors for my E&O price every year, and then you add to that I don't have to pay for my CE, folks, it almost is free. Check them out. Go to orep.org. That's orep.org for more information. And welcome back to the program, folks. Today's episode is meant mostly for my realtor friends out there. And we're talking about square footage and the importance of reporting square footage accurately. I've been telling a story about the day that I sent my trainee out to do an inspection, came back with about 1,400 square feet, and the value just wasn't there. Purchase price and value were far enough apart that it was going to be an issue. And so I started crossing my T's, dotting my I's, and making sure that we were covered. Making sure that the mistake was not on our end, and it wasn't. In this case, I went back out to the house with my trainee, and we measured it twice together, and it definitely was 1,400 square feet, not the 1,750 that was reported, and the value based on, and I want to emphasize that. Here's what happened. I went back to the office, and before I called the realtor, I wanted to make sure that I had everything in place and had the information that I needed. And so just for kicks and giggles, I ran a search of comparable properties if the property, with a hypothetical, if the property was a 1,750 square foot home. And guess what? No surprise here, but there were plenty of comparables that supported a $225,000 purchase price. In other words, value would not have been an issue if the home was definitely 1,750 square feet, as was reported in the MLS. Now, step back for just a second, okay? First of all, I don't blame the realtor in this case. The realtor probably got in fact, if I remember correctly, it's been years ago. This is pre-2008, so it's been at least 11 years since this little experience. So I could be remembering the details wrong, but if I remember correctly, we went back to the county and just to see what they had, and it seems to me that the county and the pending MLS sheet were identical. In other words, it was very apparent that the agent, the real estate agent, had not sketched the property, had not measured the property, but had relied upon county data as if it were accurate. Now, again, I don't blame the agent, though I would highly recommend that an agent either measure properties or get someone qualified. I know a lot of appraisers out there have sketching services. So these are not appraisals, but because appraisers are so highly trained on how to sketch a property properly and get the appropriate square footage, I would highly recommend that agents hire that service out when they list a property. It just saves you trouble in the long run. It saves you liability in the long run to be able to get it right. And trust me, folks, because I start out usually with the county sketch in a lot of the counties that I cover. In other words, we get the county sketch, we put it in the program, a la mode is what I use, the software, and then I go out and I always double check the sketch, and I usually at least have to tweak it, if not completely redo it. My point is this: though we may start with a county sketch to give us a basis, what we walk away from in the property is typically different, which tells you something. The county is not always accurate. In fact, they're rarely accurate. And consequently, realtors, again, this episode is for you. Do you want to rely on inaccurate information to list your properties? Here's the problem. Again, I'm giving you an anecdotal experience, but this is an experience that I think is repeated across the United States on a regular basis. A realtor will rely upon inaccurate data to price the property. A seller will rely on the realtor and just assume that it's correct. And a buyer will come in. And when was the last time, agents, that you had a buyer actually go out and measure the property? By the way, I do when I buy a house, okay? Because I've learned by experience that it's not always accurate. But I don't know many buyers that do that. Now, yes, I know that most MLS sheets at the bottom say, rely on this at your own risk. There's, the CYA statement on almost every MLS sheet that I've ever seen, that the square footage may or may not be accurate, that buyers and sellers are encouraged to measure on their own. But who does it, right? They just don't. And consequently, here's the situation. Going back to my story, you've got a trainee who went out and accurately measured a property that was inaccurately reported on the MLS, probably inaccurately measured as far as the county goes. Thus, you've got a listing agent who's relied on the county inaccurately, and you've got now a buying agent, okay, who also relies on the other information, doesn't bother to sketch the property themselves, and thus is an advocate for, an agent for their buyers who will also rely on the agent. Okay, they just assume that this information is correct and they're getting a 1,750 square foot home that's worth $225,000. Well, here's what happened. After I realized the mistake that the agent had made, I called the agent up and had a nice little, it wasn't a nice little chat. It started out as a nice little chat, and I certainly was trying to be professional. But rather than being humble and teachable and understanding the situation for what it was, this particular agent got defensive, got belligerent, and yes, got really nasty on the phone with me. Called me every name in the book, and I said, listen, Chuck. We'll use the word Chuck because that was his first name. I said, Chuck, why don't you meet me out on the property, and I'll come with my trainee and I'll show you what I'm talking about. After some reluctance, as you can probably imagine, okay, and you can probably imagine why there was some reluctance there on his hand, he was basically calling me a liar, saying that I didn't know how to sketch a property, that I didn't know how to come up with square footage, that his square footage was accurate. He claimed that he measured, okay, and despite the fact that it actually matched down to the square footage of what the county was reporting. And I said, Chuck, I'll tell you what, 2 o'clock, let's meet at the property, and I would love to walk you around the property and kind of show you what I'm talking about. He did. He showed up. I remember him being late. Not that that matters to the story, but it just sticks in my mind that he was late. And he got there finally, and I pulled out my laser, and the first thing he tried to do was challenge my laser. And so I pulled out my 100-foot tape, and I, on one wall, measured with the tape, and then I measured with the laser, and they were identical. And the laser will measure down to the nearest millimeter. And I'm very skilled in the laser. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. And I think I know how to use the laser. I think I know how what to do and what not to do to get an accurate measurement. So I showed him that the laser was absolutely accurate. I said, listen, for purposes of today, I'm happy to use a 100-foot tape if you would like me to. He said, no, that's fine. Let's use the laser. So I went out and I measured, and with every measurement, I showed him what was showing up on the laser, and I showed him. I started from scratch, okay? I didn't show him the previous sketch that I had done. I started from scratch, from a blank pad, if you will, a digital pad on my computer, and I started sketching the property, and we got around to the other side, and lo and behold, it was 1,400 square feet. And I kid you not, without using the word liar, he called me a liar again. Said I was inaccurate, that can't be right. He measured the property, and I said, Chuck, I love you, man, but I mean, I don't know what else I can do here. And I said, I'll tell you what, just for fun, just to really drive it home here, let me measure the property again. I'm going to go around a second time, and I'm going to start here. I'm going to go opposite direction. Is that okay? And he kind of rolled his eyes, but he played the game, and we went around the property counterclockwise, and I measured every angle, and I measured every corner, and I measured every length, and put it all together. And lo and behold, I know, big shocker, folks. Are you sitting down? 1,400 square feet. I kid you not. And he again told me that I didn't know what I was doing. At that point, I threw up my hands and I said, Chuck, I don't know what to tell you. I've got to finish up this appraisal. I'm going to do it based on my sketch, not based on the pending MLS information. Just so you know, it's not going to come in at the purchase price. It's going to come in below that. It will come in as a property that is worth what it's worth because it's 1,400 square feet. And just so you know, I pulled comps based on 1750. And though I did not do an appraisal based on 1750, I can tell you this much. There's a lot of comps in the 225 range if this thing was 1750. But we've got an issue here. It's inaccurate square footage. Now, here's the ending of the story. I turned in the appraisal. The sellers backed out. I became a mortal enemy of Chuck. To this day, he does not like me. He's done everything he can to not have to work with me in the future. And, which I understand. I get it, okay? It wasn't a fun situation. I wish it had turned out otherwise. I wish Chuck had been humble and said, holy smokes, you're right. There's a mistake here. And I realized he had some money on the line, realized there was a commission there. I realized there was some embarrassment to go back and admit that he had the incorrect square footage on the MLS. I get all of that, right? But unfortunately, I became the bad guy, and the sale did not go through. I watched that property stay on the market for about 3 months. Now, this was at a time that things were hot. Okay, this was pre-2008, and things were selling typically within 15 days. Days on market in our area during that time were about 15 days. I saw this sit on the market for 3 months. Every once in a while, I would pull it up as a pending or listing that I was using for another property, and I would see and I would say, interesting. I kid you not, folks. I saw a change in the MLS, and I saw that he lowered the square footage from 1,750 to 1,400, and you would be shocked and surprised to find out that it sold within 10 days. Okay? Now, why do I tell you this long story? I tell you the story because, again, the episode today is meant for agents, and I get it, okay? Your job is to sell properties. Your job is to make that property look as good as you can. Okay. There's been an ongoing dialogue in my office, and we talk about realtor ease. Okay. And that's not a slam on realtors. Okay. It just is. When you read an MLS sheet, okay, that says, for example, easy access to the commercial district. Okay. Sounds like a positive, right? You go out to the property and realize that it is on a very busy road. Okay. That's called marketing. That's called selling a property. You try to look for the most positive thing that you possibly can look for. In Idaho, this happens quite often. Come enjoy the wide open spaces, right? That's realtor ease for you're going to be in the middle of nowhere and probably have a very challenging time getting to your property on a long dirt road. Okay? So, and I get it. I understand, again, your job is to make things look as good as you possibly can to a potential buyer, right? That's your job. And consequently, you're going to make that property look as good as you can. Now, here's the problem. Value from a real estate appraisal process comes from information, okay? Comes from data. And data comes typically, at least in Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, the places that I appraise. Value comes from MLS because we are non-disclosure states. Okay, value comes from comps, and those comps come from the MLS, which are written by realtors. And so we have to be very careful about picking through the language, the realtorese, if you will, and understanding that what is said sometimes means something different. But more importantly, okay, what you do to a particular property to sell it may actually come back to hurt you in the end. Okay, so going back to the email that was sent to me by my appraiser friend, my dream team member, he said that he was having a challenging, difficult time appraising a condo. He was using comps, okay, from the project, if you will, and the purchase price was not supported because the comps were inflated. And by the way, it was interesting as an anecdotal side note to this story, the realtor that was involved here was also the realtor that was involved on the comps. So the comps were inflated. By the way, the realtor admitted that the comps were inflated, that the square footage was inflated, okay? And yet wondering why we couldn't have a reasonable time coming in at value. Keep in mind, you've got a condo, you've got the subject property that you know to be, for example, 800 square feet. All of the comps in the project are reported at 1,000 square feet, even though they're identical to the subject that you know is 800 square feet. You see the problem? Realtors, you're not doing yourself any favor when you aren't accurate in your square footage. You're not doing yourself any favor when you report and exaggerate, if you will, the details of a property. Because consequently, the whole market is skewed accordingly. Because whatever MLS you use to sell the property is also used as a comp later on as a sold listing. I don't see you going back in and changing information and saying, oh yeah, remember when I talked about easy access to the commercial district? I should also mention it was on a busy road. That doesn't happen. Be careful. Be careful about how you report things. Be careful about square footage particularly. It is a big deal. Square footage is a big deal. Again, real estate is all about location, location, location. We get that. But another second rule of value is square footage. It's a big, big deal. Make sure it's accurate. If you need some help, I know appraisers across the country that will, for a fee, a reasonable fee, go out and measure the property for you. They will give you the square footage. They will give you a sketch. They will give you the room layout. They will do it for you so that you don't have to. It's so important. Special shout out to my Dream Team member, again, who will remain anonymous, for sending in this information today. And to each of you, my listeners, if you have an issue that you would like me to pontificate on here in the on the Appraiser Coach podcast, please reach out to me. It's thecoach@theappraisercoach.com. Again, it's thecoach@theappraisercoach.com. I want to close by reminding you we've made several changes in our membership levels over the last little while. The new All-Star team includes the monthly, yes, every month get-together online that's interactive and live. And you can ask any question you want about moving your business forward. That's all now part of the All-Star team. Check it out. It's $49 a month, folks. It is a bargain to be able to move your business to the next level. Go to theappraisercoach.com/memberships. Again, theappraisercoach.com/memberships.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.